It's my very great pleasure this morning to introduce Jackie Blickman, our Ben Reed Scholar for 2011. Classmates and colleagues of Benjamin H. Reed created this award to honor the memory of their distinguished friend and to create at Episcopal a program to reflect the things that mattered to him most in his professional life, public service in both foreign and domestic affairs. This award is presented to that member of the junior class who, through excellence in upper school history courses and through a well-designed and conceived project proposal, demonstrates both significant scholarship and a significant commitment to national or international affairs. Applications for next year's scholarship will be available after Christmas and due by the end of January. And on November 15th, we'll have an opportunity to hear from EA alum and Ben Reed lecturer Courtney Banks about her experience working at and with the Defense Department and the domestic counterterrorism industry. This morning, we'll have an opportunity to hear from Jackie about her project to investigate the agreement between the Anti-Defamation League and the Mormon Church on the issue of Mormons' posthumous baptism of Holocaust victims. As you will hear, Jackie's project reflects two of Episcopal's long-standing objectives: to prepare students to be leaders in a society whose different races, cultures, and classes live and work together in harmony, and to guide students' attitudes towards all people so that their actions reflect understanding and respect, and their behavior shows honesty, decency, and a sense of duty. Jackie's scholarly approach to this subject is no surprise, rooted as it is in her excellent term paper on the Anti-Defamation League's roots in the infamous case of Leo Frank, a Jew wrongly accused of murder in early 20th century America. The fact that there is both a national and international component of Jackie's project clearly reflects Ben Reed's own life mission to bring diplomatic solutions to conflicts around the world. That said, what has impressed me most is the passion, conviction, and yet remarkably open-minded approach which has informed her project throughout. Scholarly, idealistic, passionate, and fair-minded. It reflects the qualities that I admire most in its author. Please rise to greet the co-president of your student council and the Ben Reed Scholar for 2011, Jackie Blickman.
Thank you. Please be seated. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Bryant and the entire Ben Reed Committee for giving me such an incredible opportunity. I would really encourage all juniors to take advantage of this opportunity by applying for this scholarship. This past summer, I visited Utah and Washington, D.C. as part of my Ben Reed project on Mormon and Jewish interfaith relations. The idea arose partly since my family is Jewish and my father once lived in Utah. The Mormons are a religious group originally founded by Joseph Smith in the 1820s. The official name of their church is the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. In recent years, Mormons and Jews have had to deal with a particular issue in regard to the Mormon practice of posthumous proxy baptisms. A posthumous proxy baptism is a ritual carried out by the Mormons when they attend their temples. This ritual involves the baptizing, that is, the immersion in a pool of water, of a living person in honor of someone who has passed away, with the living person acting as a proxy or a substitute for the deceased person. The Latter-day Saint Church, or the LDS Church, believes the ritual is required for the dead to reach heaven. The Latter-day Saints Church allows its members to perform proxy baptisms on members of other faiths. At one time, it allowed these baptisms on Jews who were murdered by Nazis in the Holocaust. For those of you who are neither Mormon nor Jewish, this issue may seem unimportant, obscure, and even rather odd. However, it is important to both the Mormons and the Jews, and I think one of the most important lessons I learned in cross-cultural understanding is precisely to realize that other people have different beliefs, different concerns, different issues, which we may find unimportant, but which matter to them. The discovery of the proxy baptism of Jewish Holocaust victims without the notification or permission of the victims' descendants caused great pain among the Jewish community. Jews felt that Jews who were murdered because they were Jews should not be claimed for a Christian heaven. The Jewish perspective was conveyed to the Latter-day Saints Church by the Anti-Defamation League. The Anti-Defamation League is a non-government organization that fights anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry. Through discussions in recent years, the Anti-Defamation League and the Latter-day Saints Church were able to reach a compromise. It was agreed that names of Holocaust victims would be excluded from the Latter-day Saints genealogy list for proxy baptisms. The goal of my project was to learn about Mormonism, Mormon and Jewish relations, and how these two religions were able to create a compromise, and further, how religious tolerance can be achieved, and how as a world we can become more tolerant. When I first began researching the Mormon practice of posthumous baptisms, I'm embarrassed to say that I was narrow-mindedly outraged at the Mormon practice, which at the time I misunderstood. I perceived a posthumous baptism as the Mormons forcefully baptizing members of other faiths, specifically Holocaust victims, and claiming them as Mormon in the afterlife. And the idea of this didn't seem right. I'm embarrassed to say that I started my research with this narrow-minded attitude, but as I began my research, I quickly realized that if I wanted to receive the most out of my project, I needed to completely change my attitude and open my mind. I understood that if I attempted to evaluate the Mormons through a Jewish lens, which is the lens through which I have been taught to see the world, I would learn nothing. I began asking myself the question of how I would evaluate both the Mormon and the Jewish side of this issue impartially. In my research, I discovered Krister Stendal's 3 rules for interfaith discussion. Krister Stendal was the Bishop of Stockholm and the Dean of the Harvard Divinity School. I was so touched by the open-mindedness of his rules that it became my goal to use these rules as my guide when researching and learning about my project. The first rule was, if you're going to ask what do others believe in their various faiths, ask them, not their critics and not their enemies. The second rule was, if you're going to compare, don't compare your best with their worst, but compare best with best. The final rule was, leave room for holy envy. By holy envy, he meant you should allow yourself to acknowledge to yourself that another religion may have some features which you would like to have in your own religion. After some thought, I found the third rule very beautiful. Thus, when I traveled to Utah, I made one of my primary goals to discover how I had holy envy for the Mormons. In Utah, I quickly found many ways in which I had holy envy for the Mormons. A few ways include their sense of community and their emphasis on service. The Latter-day Saints dedicate an enormous amount of their time to church activities. In addition to attending their ward for 3 hours every Sunday, Monday nights are dedicated to spending time with one's family. And Wednesday nights are dedicated to spending time with members of the same gender and age group. I had one experience during my trip, which to me serves as a wonderful example of the Latter-day Saints community. On a Wednesday night, I was eating dinner with the Tates, the family I was staying with, and their extended family. During dinner, the head of the household, Mr. Tate, received a phone call that a member of their ward needed help moving because her lease on her apartment was up the following day. Immediately, everyone at dinner jumped into action. Spencer, Mr. Tate's son-in-law, who currently served as the teacher of a male youth group that was going to meet later that night, emptied out the back of their car and drove out to help. Andrew called his whole youth group and changed the group's plans for that night to help the woman move. On last-minute notice, many members of the community changed their plans to assist a member of the ward in need. While I was amazed at the event, everyone else considered it completely normal, and someone even described the event as typical. The Latter-day Saints' commitment to helping each other extends far beyond just the Mormon community. The Latter-day Saints expend an enormous amount of time and energy on service, both internationally and domestically. I attended a teenage female youth group meeting where I participated in that week's service activity, which was quilting. Certain groups, usually females, come together and sew quilts, which are later donated to a humanitarian center. At first, I thought the idea of sewing a quilt was hopelessly old-fashioned, and indeed, Mormons have been sewing quilts since the 19th century. However, once I toured the Humanitarian Center in Salt Lake City, I again learned how superficial impressions can be completely mistaken. Humanitarian centers are nonprofit organizations that are funded by the Latter-day Saints Church and its members, and are dedicated to collecting and organizing donations that will be shipped around the world. In a week, the Salt Lake City Humanitarian Center receives 300,000 pounds of clothing donations. In 2010 alone, the Salt Lake City Humanitarian Center shipped 45,000 quilts worldwide. They are sent to poor families to supply, cover, and warmth for infants and children. I realized quilting was not a quaint, out-of-date exercise. The Humanitarian Center sends many other items as well. One is a hygiene kit, which includes items like a toothbrush and toothpaste. There's a school kit, which includes items like pencils and crayons, and a newborn kit, which includes items like a baby blanket and plastic bottles. In 2010 alone, the Salt Lake City Humanitarian Center distributed 500,000 hygiene kits, 220,000 school kits, and 78,000 newborn kits worldwide. In addition to trying to learn about the Mormons and their history, I tried to more fully understand the practice of posthumous baptisms. I found after learning more about the practice in context that my view completely changed. I realized that I had misunderstood the concept of a posthumous baptism. My first impression was that it was the Mormons' way of forcing their religion on the dead. But then I learned that an important part of this practice is that the deceased person, for whom the posthumous baptism is being performed for, has the option in heaven to reject or accept the blessings. This concept of an option to choose completely changed my view on these baptisms. The fact that the dead have the option to choose to accept or reject the blessings means to me that the Mormons are not forcing their opinions and views on the deceased. Actually, I think the name posthumous baptism sends the wrong message. I prefer to think of this ritual as a posthumous service, as the Mormons' way of honoring the dead. My father's friend George Tate certainly thinks of it that way, and he compared the Mormon posthumous baptism to the Jewish practice of saying Kaddish. Kaddish is a Jewish prayer for the dead, which is said in honor of those who have passed away. Mr. Tate's explanation made me understand that the baptism is really a service in memory of those who have passed away and not intended to offend or forcefully convert someone. With this new opinion, I began to rethink the Anti-Defamation League's agreement with the Latter-day Saints Church in regard to posthumously baptizing Holocaust victims. Although my understanding of the practice of posthumous baptisms had changed, I could still recognize why this practice would be offensive to some people. In fact, I was reminded exactly why the Jewish community feels so strongly about the issue during my time in Washington, D.C. For the scholarship, I had planned to spend some time in Utah studying the Mormon side of the issue and some time in Washington, D.C. evaluating the Jewish side. In Washington, D.C., I visited the Holocaust Museum. My visit to the Holocaust Museum served as a reminder of the atrocities of the Holocaust itself and of why the Jewish community is very sensitive about the issue of posthumously baptizing Holocaust victims. While I was in the museum, I felt very protective of preserving the memory of Holocaust victims and their stories. The final part of my project was interviewing Abraham Foxman, who is the National Director of the Anti-Defamation League and led the discussions with the Latter-day Saints Church on the practice of posthumous baptisms. Mr. Foxman is himself a Holocaust survivor, having been given as a tiny child by his parents to a nanny to hide during the war as a Christian child. His parents survived, and he was eventually returned to his Jewish family. My interview with Mr. Foxman helped me to understand how I, myself, felt about the issue. After my interview with Mr. Foxman, I decided that I believed posthumously baptizing Holocaust victims is morally wrong, because I believe that anyone who died for their religion in the Holocaust should be respected enough to be excluded from this ritual. As a Jew, I very much appreciate the Latter-day Saints Church's willingness to compromise on this practice, which I believe was the morally correct action on the part of the Latter-day Saints Church. I think what I learned from my project relates to this year's chapel theme, which is a quote from Gandhi: "Be the change you wish to see in the world." I think one of the most important things that I learned from my project is that you have to respectfully question yourself and others to learn about the world. The only way to receive the most out of a discussion is to try and see everything from someone else's point of view. Furthermore, I learned taking an interest in an issue which may seem unimportant to most people, but that is important to some people, can lead to new understandings and fascinating experiences. This experience has allowed me to change my own world and grow as a person. Thank you again to the Ben Reed Committee for enabling me to have this unbelievable opportunity. Thank you.